there, and welcome back to my channel. This is Elizabeth with Ellie's Handcrafted Jewelry, and today we're going to be wrapping a double terminated point. This project features a lot of swirls as well as a simple woven bail and frame. You can even weave in some of the beads for a nice little pop of color and sparkles. But before we get started, I'd like to thank CASDANS for becoming a sponsor and supporting this channel. CASDANS is where I currently get most of my stones. They're super high quality and wallet friendly. They have cabs, faceted stones, and beads, as well as a live gemstone auction. You can even purchase mixed cab boxes if you're like me and you can't make up your mind. They are adding new products to their website all the time, so I highly recommend checking them out. You can also join their Facebook page to see some of the new upcoming stones. I've left all the links to their website and Facebook page in the description below. Now for tools, we are going to need chain nose pliers, round nose pliers. We're going to also need some flush cutters, flat nose pliers. Now it's really good for bending for sharp angles and scrunching down the weaving wire, a mandrel for the bail, and of course, last but not least, a ruler. Okay, and for materials, we're going to need a double terminated point. This one happens to be 30 millimeters by 10 millimeters, and it's pointed on both ends, as you can see. We're also going to need 20 gauge round wire for the base wires or the frame. And then we're also going to need some 28 gauge round wire for weaving. And though it's not necessarily, I do recommend having a clamp on hand. It really helps me with my weaving. Now I've cut some 10-inch segments of wire. I have 4 of them here, and I'm just laying them here on the ruler, and I'm going to go ahead and mark the center point of the segments of wire with my Sharpie, if you have one. You can also use mechanical pencil. And then I'm going to mark on either side of that line about a 1/4 inch either way. And this will give me an idea of where I need to weave. Now I'm going to go ahead and feed my base wires into my spring clamp and then straighten them as straight as I can so to make the weaving process a little easier. I'm going to go ahead and pull a little bit of weaving wire off my bobbin, and I'm going to slide it down here onto the bottom base wire. Just going to angle up here a little bit on my wires so that way it's a little easier to weave in between these wires. And I'm just going to wrap it around this bottom base wire 3 times to start the weave. Next, I'm going to wrap it around the bottom 2 base wires, then bring it in between those 2 base wires, then up and over the 2 middle base wires, bring it back in between those base wires, then up and over the 2 top base wires, and then one more time around the top base wire. And that's called the modified sumac weave. And we're just going to go ahead and do that for the entire length of our drawn lines. Okay, so going around the bottom base wire again, up and over the top or bottom 2 base wires, in between those 2, and then up and around the middle 2 base wires, separating them a little bit, try to keep them straight if I can. Then I'm going to bring that in between those 2 base wires, up and over the top 2 base wires, and then up and around the top base wire one more time. Just continue to repeat this. Alright, so now that we've made it to the other end of our marked wire here, we're going to go ahead and secure the weave by wrapping it around that bottom base wire 3 times. Now once I've done that, I'm just going to do a little pull and twist to get a nice clean cut, and do the same on the other side with my tail piece. From there, I'm just going just to the right of the center part of the wire and going to be bending into a V shape, about like that. Then grab my point here and see how well it fits. And it's a little bit of a tight V, so I'm going to go ahead and relax it a little bit. And grab that and then set it back in there to see where it sits in my frame, and that's perfect. Now I'm going to grab a Sharpie. I'm going to mark right at the point, where the point ends, just so I have an idea of where I can bend this frame. And it's a little off on the left side, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that a little higher, just like that. And from there, I'm going to grab that back wire and pull it straight out, well, about a 45-degree angle. And I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers and create a little bend, about 1/4 of an inch from the actual frame itself. Like so, and then repeat the same on the opposite side. So from there, grabbing my flat nose pliers, I'm going to bend at that marked spot where my point ends and bend these wires straight up. From there, grabbing my stone and setting it in the frame just to make sure that the angles are just right. I'm also situating the back side where I did the little angled bends to make sure that it's right up against the back of the stone. From there, I'm going to grab the front left base wire and begin to create a little curve using my thumb to kind of guide it, and just curve it towards the bottom of the frame. From there, I'm going to create another little loop using my thumb to start it. You can also use your round nose pliers if that's easier, and just bending it over the front like that to create a little loop, just like so. From there, I'm grabbing my flush cutters, and then I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and create a little loop at the end of this wire. I'm just setting my little stone in there again just to make sure that it's situated and that the loop isn't getting in the way of the stone sitting at the bottom of the frame. I'm going to grab the opposite wire on the far right, create another little loop. This one's going to be a smaller loop, going towards the outside direction and then back in. And then I'm going to curl it the other direction, creating another loop. Then I'm going to cut about an inch from the last loop that I made, and I'm going to create a curl at the end of this one as well. Now just straightening the wires again. I'm going to grab my stone and make sure that everything is still sitting in there like it's supposed to. I'm going to go ahead and take these remaining base wires and bend them on the top of the stone, just like so. I'm going to do the same thing with the back two base wires. Grabbing my flat nose pliers, I'm going to go ahead and bend these wires straight up, and I'm going to bundle these wires together and create the bail. Now from here I'm going to go ahead and attach these swirls to the outside frame before I secure or create the bail. I just find this a little bit easier than trying to do it after I've done that, so I'm going to go ahead and string the weaving wire onto the base wire behind it. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring the weaving wire through the little loop and attach it to that wire. And then I'm going to go ahead and do that again, just like that. And then from there I'm going to wrap that around that wire 3 more times and cut off the excess. Now once I've removed the excess wire, I'm going to go ahead and secure this other swirly piece to the frame. So I'm grabbing some more weaving wire, and I did cut off some scrap wire, I guess, so about 2 to 3 inches a piece to secure these pieces to the frame. And we're just going to do what we did before and wrap it 3 times around the frame. It can be above the loop, and then we'll just scoot it down and then begin wrapping it around the loop. And now we're securing the little swirl to the frame, doing just like we did before and wrapping 2 times around it just to make sure it's really secure. You can also loosen the curl a little bit if you need to maneuver the wire a little better. Now we're just going to go ahead and wrap this wire around the frame 3 more times to secure the weave and then cut off the excess. From here I'm just straightening out the wires so that way I can go ahead and set the stone and start the bail. Now after placing my stone in the setting, I'm going to go ahead and pull one of these base wires, this one on the right, and then I'm going to go ahead and insert my weaving wire, and I'm going to wrap it around that one wire 3 times to start the weave. Now I'm going to bring these wires together and bunch them up like so, making sure that they're more sitting side by side. Grab my weaving wire and I'm going to wrap it around all of these wires bunched together about 3 to 5 times, however much you want to do, just to make sure that they are tight together. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull the far right wire, base wire, and I'm going to wrap this around 1 time just to make sure that kind of holds that in place. Then I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers and just scrunch those wires down a little bit to make room for the bail. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull 1 base wire off to my right and then 3 more off to the left, and the front 2 base wires are left for the bail. And to start that, we're going to go ahead and grab our bobbin. I'm going to untangle my wire first, move it over, and then I'm going to go ahead and bring it up and over those 2 base wires. Scrunch down the wire just a tad. I'm going to bring it in between those 2 base wires, like so. And then I'm going to bring it around and around that bottom base wire 1 time. So we're basically repeating the modified sumac weave. So around both base wires, around the top base wire, then around the bottom base wire again. And we're just going to go ahead and continue that for about 3/4 of an inch to an inch to create the bail. Just make sure that you scrunch your wire down as you go to have a nice weave. In the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and pull this up a little bit, scrunch that wire together, and then pull off the tail piece, and then I'm going to go ahead and continue on the bail. Now once I finish the bail, I'm going to go ahead and secure the little weave here by wrapping this around 3 times, or at least 2 times. And then I'm going to grab my mandrel, bring it over, and then I'm going to go ahead and fold this over the top. You can also use a pencil or a dowel or whatever else is round, or even your pliers. I'm going to go ahead and bend that up a little bit just so that it collapses against the back there. And And I'm going to use the weaving wire that I have not pulled off yet. Move those out of the way, and I'm going to wrap them around the entire top here to secure this to the frame. And you can wrap it 3 to 5 times, whichever you prefer. And then I'm going to go ahead and wrap this around one of these base wires to secure the weave, and I'll go ahead and finish that off by wrapping around a couple more times. Then I'm going to go ahead and bring this wire from the back over across the front, just like so, and then do the same thing with the opposite side, but underneath the previous wire, towards the back. So it should look something like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim off those back pieces and tuck in those excess wires. Now I'm going to go ahead and start by creating a little swoop with the frontmost base wire, and then I'm going to go ahead and create another little loop. As you can see, I'm really leveraging my thumb to kind of get a nice little swoop. Then bring it over to the side. Then I'm going to grab the wire behind it and then follow along, only without creating another loop. From there, we're going to go ahead and bring these wires around to the back and then around to the front. And eventually we'll trim these off and then tuck them in as well. I'm just going to grab this base wire here in the back and follow like before, but this one's going to be used to embellish the front, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring it around towards the front like so. Then I'm going to grab the wire that's remaining and bring it over like so. Just following along best I can, but just kind of having a little bit of a nice dimension on the opposite side. And then I'm bringing holding with my thumb the top there so I can have a nice little swoop alongside the frame and create a little loop on the side. And I'm just going to go ahead and create another little loop here at the bottom, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and bring this one over. Make sure that this sits alongside nicely. And I'm going to create another little swirl here at the end of this one. And to create those nice swirls, I usually use my thumb to kind of help hold parts of it in place while I use the pliers to kind of put pressure the opposite way, but most of the pressure is actually coming from my thumb as I hold it in place, and then using my pliers to kind of leverage it into position. And now I'm just going to go ahead and create a little swirl on this end as well. And now I'm just going to adjust my swirl. You can do that with flat nose pliers or your round nose pliers, whichever you like to do. I'm just going to go ahead and adjust all my swirls and loops until I'm happy with them. Last but not least, we're on to securing the remaining swirls, and we're going to do just like we did at the beginning, only this time we need to create a little opening. So I'm just going to gently pull with my flat nose pliers just a little bit to provide a little gap, and then feed my weaving wire in, and then use that to secure my swirls. Now I've wrapped this around the frame 3 times, and now I'm going to go ahead and scooch this up a little bit, and then I'm going to use it to wrap around this top swirl one time to kind of secure it to the frame, and then I will do the same to the bottom swirl. Now on to this final swirl. Grabbing my weaving wire, sticking it through the little gap. I'm going to wrap it around 3 times. Although I'm going to go the opposite direction. I think I might pull this weaving wire out and do the opposite way because it'll be a little easier on me. So sticking it through the gap from the top. And then I'll wrap it around the frame 3 times to start, and then I will wrap it around the swirl. And here's your finished piece. And if you're looking for some fun, insightful tutorials, feel free to check out my website. I'm working on adding some more tutorials over the next few months, so be sure to check back often. And until next time, happy weaving!